What's going on, fellas? Sean here, Hammerhead Garage. Time for the Sunday night Spitball. Just enjoying a nice coffee. Wait a few minutes for some of you lads to get on here that want to come on. Cheers. Aha, there he is. What's up, Admiral Sandwich? Cough, cough, hum. Yes, are you sick or something? I hope not. There's no such thing as flu anymore, buddy. Everything's COVID nowadays, right? What's up? You're 7 minutes late. Yeah, apologies, my man. I don't have a watch. I can't keep time very good. So you can blame that, and you can blame this large cup of coffee here. I had to brew her. What are you up to? How's things in your neck of the woods there, Admiral? Must be a lag. My computer's probably crapping out on us. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can... Oh, he's making popcorn. That a boy. Why not? I had some popcorn yesterday. It was already pre-popped, though. It was one of those long ones that comes in like the long movie bags. There's a guy here locally that makes it. It's pretty good, too. It's really salty, though, so you're going to probably want to drink a beer or a gallon of something after having some of it, right? But anyway, I'm going to see if I can share my screen tonight with you guys. My internet kind of sucks, so it may not work very good, but I'm going to try it here. I just saw this article I want to go through with you guys on turbocharging. Let's just see if I can do it here. Share. I don't mind salt. Yeah. Salt can be okay. 10 tips for turbocharged engine builds. I don't know if you guys can see that. I think you can. Anyway, let's go back to the beginning here. I was reading this, and it's kind of interesting. And there's some good tips in there for newbies on turbo like myself. Building an engine for turbocharged duty is, for many, uncharted territory. Boost is a familiar cornucopia of manifold topping superchargers. See, everything seems to be talking about superchargers, which I'm sure is fine, but I'm looking for information on turbocharging. What does it say here? It could be said that any power adder application can benefit from a bolstered bottom end, and that would be true. But with the power potential of even the most cost-effective turbocharger, a connecting rod upgrade is a wise move. Yeah, if you have the engine apart and you've got money to spend, it sure is. When boost comes into the equation, cylinder pressure spike exponentially, and most stock connecting rods, especially those with high mileage, are not up to the task. I think that's only if you're boosting like 20 pounds or 15 pounds. For low boost applications, 6 to 8 psi, stock crankshaft, especially in the LS family, have proven more than adequate. Turbochargers are by nature progressive and typically don't have the power and torque spikes associated with nitrous and superchargers. This trait spares the crankshaft from shock loading that could be potentially catastrophic. So there you go, right from the horse's mouth. Any power adder is a supercharger except for nitrous. Well, nitrous is too, though. It's chemical supercharging, if you want to look at it in them terms. So, yeah. But like you just said here, turbos don't beat on the crank as hard as the other forms do. I know nitrous hits awful hard. I've been in a few cars that had nitrous power, and when you're on the bottle, you can certainly tell because it's just pushing you right into the seat. And the same is true with any supercharging. I mean, my motorcycle was the same way. when the boost is on, and it's always on with a blower because it's connected directly to the crank, whether you're underdriving it, overdriving it, or 1-to-1, which is what I was doing, 1-to-1. But as soon it goes up by the amount of RPM you have. So the more you're into it, the more, the more you're going to get. Turbos seem to like that kind of thing. Let's see here. Cylinder heads. What does it say about that? Boost is the great equalizer. It can take a small port, lousy valve angles, and low lift cams and blow gale force winds into the cylinder. While a better flowing cylinder head will always move more air, boost or no boost, it is important to consider your power goals and budget. Well, see, I'm already ahead of the curve on that one because I've got those heads that I did all that work to. And I noticed a huge difference naturally aspirated. So I'm definitely going to get some more power with the turbo out of those heads. There's no question. Because the airflow moves through an engine twice through the cylinder heads. I mean, that's where you get a lot of your power anyway. But, I mean, stock heads will work because the blower, the boost is cramming it in there, right? You could have lousy ports, lousy valves, small ports, even a bunch of slag in there from the friggin' from the making of the head, blocking half the port, and the blower would still shove it in there. Better springs is a good idea. The thing of it is, though, like when I built this head, I put decent springs in it. We're not going to be revving this thing even with the blower or with the turbo much past 6,000 RPM. So we'll be fine in that regard. The cam I have is perfect for a blower. It's a split duration, and it's on a 112 lobe separation angle, so there's not a lot of overlap between the intake and exhaust valves. So it'll be ideal. Let's see what else it says here. Head studs, bolts, and MLS head gaskets. Well, I don't have to worry about that. I do have ARP stuff in there. They're not studs, but they're good quality bolts. And like we got to remember, I'm not running big boost here either. I mean, 6 to 8 pounds is pretty mild, right? I don't plan on running much more than 6, at least not right now, because the block just won't take it. That's the weak link where I'm going to be having a problem with, is I'm trying to push all this power through a stock Ford roller block, right? And that's what it is. It's a production factory roller block. Let's see. What else does it say? Roller rockers are beneficial. I've got pretty good rockers in there right now. They're not full roller, but they're roller tip, and they're pretty strong. Durable piston rod package, yes. Like I said, if you have the engine apart, it's probably a good idea to build it. Most small block Fords with power adders shouldn't be constantly at 6,000. No, it won't be, because it's going to be mostly street driven anyway, Will. So it's going to see 6,000. I've had it to 6,200 a few times already, and it's not a problem. They'll handle that. I know guys that have revved them to 7 on the stock bottom end, and they're getting away with it so far until they're not, right? Camshaft grinds. In a turbocharged engine, careful attention to camshaft selection can pay huge dividends in power, torque, and drivability. Because positive pressure in the intake manifold boost is force feeding air into the cylinders, a turbo cam can often be very mild in comparison to a naturally aspirated grind, needing less lift duration to accomplish a similar horsepower goal. Yeah, it's because the overlap, they want to keep it low, because if the overlap is too wide, you're going to be pushing your boost pressure right out the intake valve, right across the deck to your exhaust valve, right straight out cylinder. So you're not going to have a chance to build up enough cylinder pressure to make the power or to bring in the extra fuel. People building the LS engine, yeah, I know, Will, the LS the world, right? But I don't want to do that. I mean, if I had a Chevy vehicle, I might consider doing something like that. But I know that's what the trend is: twin turbo LS motors, right? Guys build them all the time. We had 3 or 4 of them at our shop. One guy was going to make 1,000 horsepower with a root style blower on it. And it's cool and all that, but it's just not my cup of tea. I like old school, man. That's where my interest is, right? Everything has a breaking point, exactly. And if you give the two exact... Oh, there's Sean. What's going on, buddy? How's things in the Cape tonight? So you give the 2 of the same engines to 2 different guys and get them to do two similar things, you'll have 2 different outcomes normally. That's been my experience anyway. There's some people that are just naturally able not to break stuff. And then you're going to have people that you could give them the most bulletproof package in the world and they'll blow it to hell. It just depends. Surviving, Sean says. Right on. I figured I'd share a screen and just read some interesting shit I found on the web here tonight about turbos. Large turbo low back pressure systems found on, say, a high horsepower race car will be much more tolerant of high overlap cams. This is why many tuners have found success with nearly stock cams and high back pressure street turbo applications that offer very wide lobe separation angles. Yeah, because the wider the lobe separation angle, the less overlap you have and the less chance you have of blowing boost out through the valves before you get a chance to make cylinder pressure. So that's always a good idea. The cam I have in there now, though, is ideal for boost because it has a little more duration and lift on the exhaust side than it actually does on the intake side. And the overlap, like the lobe separation angle is 112, which is pretty near. I think stock is 114 for those engines. What's Will saying here? I'm old school in the fact that I'd rather have a tunnel ram out the hood instead of turbos. Yeah, tunnel rams are cool and they can work on the street because my buddy Justin Wilson from Skull Garage, they've had tunnel ram stuff on a lot of their cars, their hot rods, and they used to run them up on the street. And they turn some awesome RPM, man. That's one thing about the old tunnel rams. They're great for high RPM, like 7,000 RPM. That's when they really shine, especially if you match them with a cam that really comes on from like 4 to 8 or 4 to 7,500. That's where they really shine. Boost is cool, though. He sent me a message. He saw what I was doing, and he said, listen, I'll tell you, he goes, once you get a taste for it, he goes, you'll never want to go back to anything else. He said, it's the ultimate in poor man hot rod power making ability is to source your own turbocharger setup and build your own kit. He says, once you got it, he says, you'll love it. He said, he's been driving his car around and getting decent mileage, and making lots of power. EPA doesn't like tunnel. EPA doesn't like anything nowadays. You were here last week, Will, when I was talking about that, how they're starting to tighten up on the restrictions for the hot rodders and stuff. And they may stop making these parts altogether, because if you go and you look at some of these parts, most of them say for street or not for road use, for off-road use only, right? So if they do that and they squash that whole aftermarket, you won't be able to buy shit off Summit or Jegs or any of them other places. It'll go right back to the way it was back in the 70s and the 60s, where if you want to make power, you're going to have to do it yourself. You're going to have to figure out how to do it. Hour-long video SEMA did about it. Yeah, you should send me a link to that, man, if you can. I'd like to see that, because I'm interested in staying up to date as to what the hell's going on with that, because it does affect us here in Canada too, because a lot of that stuff gets, finds its way up here. What they targeted is the diesel tuners a lot. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I mean, properly tuned diesel, I don't think it's any dirtier than anything else. But see, they start with the diesel tuners, but where does it end? That's the whole problem. Okay, fuel. Let's see what they say about fuel for boost. Fueling a turbocharged engine requires more octane than a comparably naturally aspirated engine. There's a number of ways to accomplish this. Premium pump fuel, when boost, ignition timing, and intake air temperatures are kept in safe ranges is the most convenient, but probably the most power limited. E85 ethanol based. Well, that's out the window with us, Sean, because we can't even get any damn E85 here, I don't believe. Yeah, you can get away with a lot more. Intercooling, yes. Water meth injection seems to be really popular these days. You can run like a 10.5 to 1 or 11 to 1 compression engine and then put 15 pounds of boost on it with water meth if you've got it set up right. You can buy those kits. You just use windshield washer fluid as the alcohol in them, and they lower the intake air temperatures, so you can get away with more timing, more boost, more everything. You basically turn pump gas into high octane fuel. Yeah, they probably won't. Well, timing considerations. This actually does have an effect on me, even though it's only going to be low boost, but in a carbureted and aftermarket fuel injection application, especially ignition timing is a major consideration. Distributors are a great means of transferring spark energy to the cylinder, but they are quite dumb. No offense intended, but distributors don't receive any feedback from the engine, nor would they be equipped to deal with it if they did. It's paramount to have an intelligent ignition device feeding a signal to the distributor that can detect boost and retard the ignition advance, respectively. MSD, of course, I knew they were going to mention that. But I think for what I'm doing, that system using the Hobbs pressure switch will work quite well. EPA reminds me a lot of a woman. How's that, Will? They never stop until they get their way. Yeah, I hear you in that regard. Yeah. We're gonna just keep going anyway, even if they do, slow it down. We'll figure something out. Fuel injection versus blow through carb. There seems to be a big war on the internet as far as this goes. Of course, the guys that have injection are for it, and the guys that have carburetors are for it. The way I look at it, and what I've looked at, is that there's pros and cons to friggin' both methods, right? I mean, there's good friggin' ways on both regards. The good thing about blow through is that if you get the fueling figured out, it's a pretty solid system that you can adapt, and you don't need a professional tuner usually to help tune the thing. Also, there's the added benefit of when the pressurized fuel mixture goes down through the venturi of the carburetor, there's a cooling effect there. And it almost acts like a miniature intercooler. So it allows you to run more boost and sometimes not even have to intercool the thing. I was initially going to put an intercooler on it, but I don't think I'm going to now, because I think I'll be okay as long as I keep boost pressure fairly in check. But I am planning on running some race fuel in my premium pump gas just to up the octane a few levels until I get the tune sort of figured out. The plugs will tell me what I need to know. Yeah, like I'm not going to be putting like huge amounts of boost pressure through this thing. 6 pounds is, as far as boost goes, that's almost nothing. It'll provide a lot more torque and power though. If you guys get a chance, go over to Kick-Ass Mustang's Garage, my buddy that was on there, and he had a video last week of, he had the 10-pound wastegate spring in his Ranger, and he took his new setup for a ride. And he's got the camera mounted on the back of the bed so you can see what's going on. And he ran out of fuel. He said the carburetor was sucking dry. He was going lean, but holy shit, man. The friggin' tires were breaking loose on him, and go check it out. It's like a 3-minute video. It was pretty cool. And that's like with a 10-pound spring in there. So I don't even know how much boost he was getting. He said he didn't get a good input as to what boost pressure the thing was making. So, but he figures that it was, you can hear it in the video where it's breaking up. He said that the float bowls were running lean, like he was running out of fuel. So I don't know what his fuel pressure regulator is or whether it was working or how it's set up, but that's something you got to definitely watch. 10 pounds going lean is enough to blow her up. There's no question about that. There's quite a difference from what I've been reading from 6 PSI to 10 PSI. It doesn't sound like a big difference in cylinder pressure, but it's substantial. When you get up above 10 pounds, it's that's when scary shit happens. And you can blow a motor up with a lot lower boost pressure than that too. But I think we'll be quite safe with what we're doing. And even if we don't, we're not, you know, you can get a short block pretty reasonable somewhere, right? The goal is if we're gonna break the thing, we're gonna have a bunch of fun with it first before we break it. So 10 pounds and get you where you're going. You're damn right. The thing is traction. Like I was looking today at bias ply tires online. I know, Sean, you mentioned about drag radials being bad with a manual transmission car, but what a lot of guys are doing is they're using those bias ply tires. They're like a street strip kind of tire. And the bias ply apparently is more forgiving. They don't have quite as hard a sidewall, so they'll actually wrinkle like a drag slick will on the street a little bit. And the only problem with them is that if you ever get in a situation where you're in the rain, they don't work too well apparently in the rain. They're greasy, as Ricky would say, or Bubbles would say in Trailer Park Boys. They're greasy, you know, because there's no tread there. There's like a few little grooves cut in the tire, and that's pretty much it for tread. But we'll figure something out. Like I said, I got a set of weld wheels here that I can run a 2610 tire on, Mickey Thompson ET drag slick for when I go to the track with the truck, and then figure out something that maybe a set of Nitos. I don't know, whatever. The problem is you can't take like 10 different tires and buy them and try them. It'd be nice if you could, because then you could figure out what'll grab and what won't grab, right? But there's old Hammerhead himself, you can see in the background there, coming to life. Yeah, man, I can go to the junkyard. I know there's about a dozen of them right now, Will, there's some of them that aren't even, they had probably less than 10,000 kilometers on them. They were just rebuilt that I can pick up fairly affordable, you know. But anyway, we're not going to go that route. We're not even going to suggest that, because I'd like not to have to do that. But everyone's telling me, well, why don't you just buy an EFI? You can get those ones that mount right in place where the carburetors go. Yeah, you can do that. And you can even get power adder versions of those that are boost referenced. But they're not cheap. They're not giving them away. I looked there, they're getting awful close to $2,000 by the time they get up to Canada here for that setup. It's a nice setup. I think it would probably work really, really well, but I'm not going to have a problem converting this carburetor to boost reference. I can tell you right now. It'll work out fine. It's going to probably take a lot more fiddling with than maybe something right out of the box, but I'm no slouch with carburetors. I'm quite used to fiddling with those things. So we'll figure it out. Just get a good wide band and a whole bunch of plugs. And I got a box with 100 different jet selections in it, and just go to town, figure out what works. But yeah, EVI aren't a solution. But see, a lot of guys, they want to go the easy route. They figure it's going to be easier to get that thing. Not to my old school brain. Fuel injection, usually to my knowledge, involves a tuner or somebody that knows exactly how to set those things up the way they like to be set up. Whereas a carburetor is a carburetor, but it doesn't follow exactly the same principles as one that's boosted, because there's different things involved, like boost reference power valves and vacuum opening your power valve versus pressurized fuel bowl opening it and things like that. But once you sort all that stuff out, you're okay. The biggest problems from the people I've talked to are, it's not the full boost AFR or the idle AFR that's the trouble. It's the mid RPM cruise, where you're coming out of, let's say, 1500 to 2000 RPM, and you're just starting to make like a half a pound or a pound of boost. The thing runs dead lean or something like that. That's where the trouble lies, right? So I guess these boost reference power valves, where you have a screwdriver and you can adjust the plunger strength on the end of it, they help with that mid-range stuff, right? So that'll definitely be something we'll have to play with. But if we can get that sorted, we should be in good shape. But the thing's going to be a rocket ship. There's no question about it. I mean, even with 6 pounds of boost, like I said, you're looking at damn near 500 flywheel horsepower on this rig. So it's going to be it's going to require some diligence and some attention to detail when I'm behind the wheel for sure, because I'm basically driving in a beer can. No cage in it yet, but that'll be if this does what I think it's going to do, the next modification will be a roll cage of some sort, just for peace of mind, because unless you're like completely crazy and you don't give any thought to that, what happens with me is when I get up over 100 miles an hour, my brain starts working on a survival mode at that point when I'm driving in a car that doesn't have a cage in it. And you're thinking more about surviving and maybe tipping out of it when you probably should tip into it to see what it'll really do, right? If you know what I'm saying. I'm making any sense. Yeah, it's going to fry some tires and some clutches, will, no doubt. But we'll get it all sorted out. But it'll be fun. And another thing I'm really checking out is Hoppy's Junkyard Garage. You guys check him out. He's got the 86 Ranger, I think it is, or 85 with the 2.3 liter turbo. And this week he just got a ported and polished race head for that little 2.3. And he's running a fuel injection system in it there now, and trying to figure all that out and get all the bugs out of it. But I think that little thing's going to be a little rocket ship, that little 2.3. It'll probably hurt the feelings of some V8 guys, I'd be thinking, when he gets that sorted out. So go check him out. He's a pretty cool guy too. But yeah, this week I was working on the top end of an ATV, and I had some parts on order for some other guys. I had another guy with a 97 Yamaha Big Bear that wanted me to do a top end on it, but he didn't want to pay the money. And I was trying to explain to him, well, your cylinder head's completely wrecked. It's hard to find valves, but I can get you a brand new head from the States for $650. And the whole job was going to be, I forget what it was, ended up being, but it was quite reasonable. They would have charged him a lot more to do it, but he didn't want to do it. So that's fine. That's generally the way that works. Everybody wants their engine rebuilt until you give them a figure as to what it'll actually cost to do it, right? And then reality sets in, and they come back to earth. But the odd one we'll get, like I said, this, if you've seen the video of me taking the head apart, there was so much damn oil going through that sucker, man. It looked like a mosquito fogger when you fired it up. And there's still oil coming out of the exhaust, even with the new top end, and there will be until I get a bunch of heat in that new motor, the new top end. So I'm going to keep it around the yard here and yard drive it a bit and break the rings in a little better. Probably dump the oil and put a new filter on it. And I like to do stuff like that for people that spend the money, because, you want to take care of those people. But there was a few things that contributed to that whole deal. And a lot of people don't understand that you can't drive an air-cooled ATV the same way you can drive a water-cooled one, because they're two different animals altogether. I took the front clip, which is the body work and the light bar and everything off the front, and I found out that the oil cooler was completely blocked with mud. Now, I mean completely. I took 100 psi air nozzle and I wasn't able to force any air through it. That's how plugged up it was. So if you're looking at an air-cooled engine, the only things that keep those engine cylinder head temperatures under consideration, it says to normal running, is airflow over the cylinders and an oil cooler that cools the oil down. Well, if you don't have an oil cooler and you've got an air filter that's black, it looks like muskeg, that's how dirty the air filter was, what do you think's going to happen? You're going to have a super hot engine that's pulling in dirty air, and like basically you might as well throw a handful of sand in the intake tract. That's exactly what you're doing. So when I pulled the cylinder and the rings out of that thing, they were so shiny that they looked like chrome in there. You could see them from space. I turned the piston on the side and I looked at the rings, and they almost blinded me in the sun. They were so shiny. So it's no wonder that thing was burning a liter of oil a day, right? So it's just, but you have to find a way to point that out to the customer in a way that isn't rude, and that they can understand and that they'll continue to do, right? But a buddy of mine used to say years ago when we were working on these things, he said, you know what, don't tell them too much because you want repeat business, right? It's almost like the battery thing. Like everyone's buying new batteries every year just because they don't know how to take care of the old battery. But but sometimes it's just because they're junk, and they are, compared to the way they used to be. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but that's kind of what I was doing this week. While I'm waiting for parts for that big 1900 that I have transmission parts that are back ordered. That we may or may not be able to get those by the middle of April. I hope we can, because I'm going to need at least 40 hours to put this thing back together. So what's Will been doing? A couple 100 hours on it, and you could make lenses for your glasses out of his rings. They were some shiny, buddy, let me tell you. They were so shiny, the cylinder and the piston rings, that you could see them from space. Like, it looked like chrome. They almost blinded me when I was looking at them in the sun. And like I said, you can't make a round ring seal in an oval hole. It doesn't work, right? So there's so much oil. Like, I put the new top end together. It runs like a champ. I set the valve clearances and everything, but it still smokes like crazy because there's still probably a liter of oil in the exhaust system. It's likely not going to rust out anytime soon. But anyway, hey, Bradley, what's going on, man? Love the stories and knowledge. Keep up the vids. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. We're trying to keep people entertained this time of year in Canada. It's kind of hit or miss. We get an awful chill running up through our veins here. And the tendency is to want to sit by the wood stove instead of get off your ass and go out and actually do some work. But the last couple of weeks, we've been sort of getting some stuff done. And I've been ordering more turbo parts for this turbocharged build and trying to get stuff as cheaply as I can. I'm going to make a trip to the junkyard. I don't know if it'll be this week or next week. At 5 to 7 PSI, you wouldn't even need an intercooler. No, that's what I was saying earlier, Sean. Just the Venturi effect going into the carburetor is going to be enough to cool the charge. I'm going to make a trip to the junkyard and see if I can get some new or next to new exhaust pipe, some 2.5-inch stuff, because I know there's some cars up there that are flipped over that I could take a Zalza to and cut off some sections. Napa used to sell 10-foot lengths of that stuff for like $60. They still may. If they do, then maybe I'll go that route with it. I'll just buy a 10-foot piece and a bunch of 90s and some 45s and just go at it. But we'll just have to figure that out as it comes. I know that the cast iron manifold is going to work on the driver's side, but I'm going to have to, just take a battery powered Zalzal, Sean, and just cut off a bunch. But I'm going to have to pour it out and put a head gasket like a exhaust gasket on there, trace it out with some machinist die, and then take my grinder and grind out that manifold because it's flipped upside down. So it's going to cover some of the port, right? My favorite word, Zalza. Yeah, they're quite a tool. I prefer them over the death wheel. That's what I call grinders for obvious reasons. For anyone that's ever used one, or I've near had my limbs decapitated with them sons of bitches. I don't know how many times, but anyway, I should get that on video. That would be a comedic moment. Now, she ain't got to flow like crazy for 5 pounds. No, it doesn't, but I don't want half the friggin' port covered either, especially when I took all that time and effort to port those cylinder heads. I like to get things lined up there as good as I can. The good thing, too, the reason why I bought the 60 millimeter wastegate, the super big one, is guys were telling me, I was on some of these sites like Precision Turbo and this race shop down in the States. That's all they do is they build turbos for cars. Like really high dollar stuff. But anyway, I asked him some questions because I like going on there and asking questions too, right? To get answers from people. And he was telling me for what I'm got planned, the 60 millimeter would be the best choice because it would dump a whole pile of boost of exhaust press gas out. So with a manual boost controller, it'd be much easier to keep that at 6 pounds or 7 pounds or whatever, and you wouldn't have boost creep. Apparently they have this problem on higher boosted applications where the boost pressure just will creep up and up and up and up. And before you know, it's at the danger zone, right? I don't think 6 pounds or even 7 really is going to be the danger zone, but I guess that is another valid point for having an accurate boost gauge in your car that you can see, so you know whether or not, and an air fuel ratio gauge so you can see whether things are getting out of whack in a hurry. And there's probably a reason for those gauges. I'm assuming that is the reason. If you pay attention to your gauges. Well, the only time I really watch my gauges a lot is when I'm really on the thing, or if it's a hot summer day, I'm keeping an eye on the coolant temperature gauge, right? I rarely watch the oil pressure gauge, but I do watch the coolant temp gauge on a hot day. And it's a good idea to keep, if you're really, like if I was on the boost really hard for like a long half a mile stretch or something, I'd want to keep my eye on the gauges a little bit just to see what the hell's going on, right? I mean, you may save an engine that way. I know a few dudes that had low oil pressure and were able to shut the car off in time to save the engine. In some cases, it's just the gauge, but in some cases, it was the pump too. And if they had kept running it, you get the death rattle. And anyone that's ever ran an engine that didn't have any oil pressure in it knows what I'm talking about. It's not a very nice sound whenever you got metal on metal contact with your crank or your rod to your crank journals, the big end of your rod to the crank journals. It makes quite a noise. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, she ain't gonna fly. DW200. What's the DW200, buddy? A DeWalt? Would be what a DW is? I'm thinking that's what he's talking about. That's his favorite brand of Zalza. Yeah, so there's this other company. I think I was telling you guys last week. Let me see if I can share the screen again. I want to show you guys this because let me find it first. I don't know if this company is legit or if they're a bunch of scam artists, and I don't dollars to find out. So maybe you've even ordered from these clowns, whether or not they are indeed clowns and I should just avoid them, or they are a legitimate deal. Let me just bring it up here and then I'll share it. So this is the company that I was telling you guys about that had all that turbo stuff for cheap. Hold on. Shopping cart. Can you guys see that? Yeah, so Mamatro. Or is that how you call that? Matramo? I don't know how the hell you pronounce that. But anyway, they got some stuff for pretty cheap here. Let me see if I can bring my shopping cart up. I'll show you what I mean. No, I don't think I can. But anyway, yeah, they got pipe for like $100 or like a whole bunch of stuff for $100. And it looks legitimate. Like they have like a secured checkout and all that stuff. But Bradley, have you ever dealt with these guys before? And what was your experience if you did deal with them? But they have like V-band, stainless steel V-band clamps on there for like $20. Oh, you haven't? Okay. For like $20, like, let me just put it in here. T4, well, let me just put in T4 divided flange. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Because this flange on eBay, they want about $70 for it. This one right here. That's the one right there. That's how I was going to build my hot side. I was going to run, this is a T4 flange, so my turbo would bolt to this part of it. But the two inlets are for 2.5-inch pipe, and I would run my pipes out of my exhaust manifolds directly into that. So they want $17.35, but let's see, I don't know if that's American. I think I got that on American currency, but you can change it here. You have the ability to change it to Canadian, euros, Great Britain pounds. So it's $21 Canadian for that piece. Let's show you something else here. Let me just put in 2.5 inches exhaust pipe. I'm kind of curious whether these guys are legit or not. They offer free shipping for over $50 for the stuff. Problem is I'm so cheap that I don't want to take a chance that they are not legitimate. Like you can get electric cutaways for your exhaust system, like you can control from inside the car for like $40 a piece. Yeah, look at this, a 2.5-inch V-band flange clamp, $10.67 Canadian. The cheapest one I could find was $30. See if that'll load. I guess the picture's not going to load. Okay. But anyway, you get the idea. So yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind, if you don't mind, just ask around, just see if these guys are legit or what the deal is, without me having to put an order in first to find out. They have a money back guarantee and all that other stuff. Like, look here, 2.5-inch OD mild steel exhaust. This is a 4-foot length. They want $15 for 4 feet of this. Oh, it's definitely Chinese, Will, and that doesn't really bother me that much. It's just I don't want to put $100 order through and then not get anything, or it takes 6 months to get here. Let's see what else. 5-inch 90-degree elbows. Yeah, because like I don't know if you guys, well, you don't, most of you guys don't. Sean knows because he's up here, but you know, they want a lot of money for everything nowadays. It's like up here in Canada, especially, even exhaust projects, like it's dear. They want a pound of flesh for friggin' everything now. Like here's 6 stainless steel Mandrel bent 90-degree elbows for $12.50. No picture. Let's see if I can find another. Maybe just buy each here. $2.61 each. Like they've got silicone hoses. Like here's a red silicone 2.5-inch elbow for your cold side of your turbocharged kit. You know, $20, $19.10. Like something like that on eBay would be like $35. You know what I mean? So if you can get it here, it'll be a lot cheaper to do for sure. Let's see what else we got here. Like a parts for cars and stuff there too. I wasn't really interested in that. It was just the piping and whatnot. A lot of work to make it look legit, but can't find anything online. Yeah, see, I looked online too, Bradley, and I didn't see anything at all that even remotely. I even tried the Better Business Bureau, and I couldn't find anything on these guys at all. So that kind of disturbs me a little bit, to be completely honest. Because if they were legit, why wouldn't there be legit stuff on them? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll have to figure it out. But Yeah, so that's all that's been going on with me. What are you guys up to? Just getting a couple of hauls of that good coffee in. I don't see my man on here tonight. Working on some NDU. What's an NDU? Oh, brute forces. Yes, my arch nemesis, the good old brute force. Yeah, I get a lot of questions from people on those. Just for the simple reason that I used to work at a Cowie dealership and have a lot of experience with those things. And they're good machines, like I was telling people, but you have to understand the very basics first before you can troubleshoot those things efficiently, especially the fuel injected ones, because they're getting to the point now where they're almost as complex as a vehicle, if not more so in a lot of ways. And there's nothing cheap on those things at all. Like to buy anything from the factory is pricey. The main thing with those is to keep them out of the water. They don't have very good valves on them. They're kind of thin. And lots of times we get them in, they don't start, and you do a leak down on them. They're 45 or 50% leakage past the valves because they pulled so much dirt in them. Like in Alberta, they used to swamp them, right? They used to swamp them regularly. I had a customer one time even sent me a picture of his brute force, and all that you could see him in the Saskatchewan River. And it was just the top of his helmet and the handlebars sticking above the water. The rest of the machine was floating down the damn river. And I was like, you shouldn't have showed that to me. It just proves to me that you're not taking care of it. Built an 840. Yeah, right on. One blown up that I rebuilt. Yeah. No, definitely. You can do that. We used to frown upon the radiator relocation kits. They used to put the rad up on top of the like the front clip. And I said to Buddy, I said, that just tells me that you're abusing it. You have it in the mud because you're going through so much quagmire that you need to have the rad up there or else it'll plug up. Right. But anyway, whatever. I mean, you buy these machines to have fun with them, but it costs a lot of money to have fun with them. It puts you in the poorhouse quick unless you're doing it yourself. You get parts reasonable, aftermarket stuff. But yeah, 1 year there, I did 26 brute force engines, and a lot of work that summer. And we used to get cranks and grind cranks, and we'd do right complete engine jobs right up to top ends to just about everything. But yeah, we still get stuff blown up here, but not as much as when I was in Alberta. We used to get stuff there, especially after a long weekend. You'd do work for them like during the week, and then they go out for the long weekend, and then Monday morning you'd show up to work, and there'd be a whole pile of machines in the parking lot that customers had dropped off on Sunday night that were all broke, right? That needed service work, or they needed engine jobs, or whatever they needed, right? But that used to keep us quite busy, and there was only 2 of us in the shop at that time, so we were busy. But in any case, yeah. So 100%, at least 1,800 to rebuild. Yeah, the biggest bill I ever had for a brute force was 3,600 Canadian, and that was a fair amount of work. That was like splitting the cases, crank up. Brand new crank bushings, everything, like the whole deal. We have the factory tool to replace the bushings and the crank, right? And because you put the bush in, it doesn't come reamed, so there's a factory tool to put on there to ream the bushing out, to size it to the crank journal. And it's a pretty big deal to do a complete overhaul on those. There's a lot of little bits and pieces. Not as many as what the project I got going on right now, though, with that XV 1900 Raider. That thing is a beast. The engine alone was 300 and some pounds. And I had to split it completely apart to get the transmission out so I could even find that I had 2 broken teeth on it, and a bunch of other damage. I miss the days back when they had a remote transmission that you could take off. you wouldn't have to take the engine apart. You just pulled the tranny out and you could take it apart and figure out what's going on. Those were the good old days, man. And they had these things that a lot of racer transmissions, even now on race bikes, they have what's called a cassette transmission. It's a bunch of bolts, and you just undo the bolts and you pull it out, and all the gear clusters are all stacked right up on this cassette that you haul right out of the thing. And then you can service the transmission, fix it, and then slide it back in and put the bolts back in it. Well, that would save a lot of friggin' time, right? It's Will saying here. Went to a class on Wednesday for the school I'm going to once I finish high school, and then got using oxyacetylene. Yeah, I started welding when I was in the Army, and then I just never stopped. That's where I learned to use a torch and all that stuff, and I did a little bit of stick welding. And then I went up to Baffin Island, and I learned a little bit of welding up there. When I should have been doing my job, I used to sneak into the welding shop and help them out in there, and they'd show me some things. My brother's a welder too, so he showed me a bunch. But I'm not a great welder, but I'm okay. I can lay a decent bead, decent enough. But welding's cool. You can, if you got a way to cut steel, and you've got a good imagination, and you've got access to a welder and a torch, you can build a lot of shit. Right, I've seen people make tools with it. You can build all kinds of stuff. That's coming up too. I stole a bunch of metal out of the scrap bin at work, and I'm going to make the first project for this new welder I bought is going to be a welding cart, so I can cart the thing around. Right, I'll put some dolly wheels on it, and I'll have videos of me putting all that together and trying out this new welder. So that'll be interesting. That'll be fun. Plus, I'll get a chance to fine-tune the voltage a little bit, maybe, so that I don't burn right through the exhaust pipe, because flux cores are pretty hot process. It's probably one of the hottest welding processes there is, so you got to kind of go easy. But it'll weld some pretty thick steel, thicker than what's even on that little on the inside cover where your wire feed is. They have suggestions for how to set the machine up in the maximum thickness metals. You don't have to go by that. I've seen guys weld a lot thicker stuff than that. They just use a torch to preheat the metal a little bit, and they stick it together, no problem. And I've even had a few guys that have pulled apart. When you're a professional welder, you do like the CBW tests up here in Canada, where they actually cut your weld apart and they x-ray it to see how good it is. Or they put it in a press and they put thousands of tons of pressure on it to try and break it and stuff like that, right? But my brother could tell you all about that stuff. But yeah, man, that's the way to do it, Will. Like when I was just out of high school, I used to go to night school and take trade classes. Back then, they used to offer trade classes at some of the trade schools at night for like the general public, or if that wanted to learn like whatever, machine work or how to read micrometers or welding, and then like say Wednesday night you go there from 6 until 10 or 11 at night, right? And learn a skill, right? You pay, like, I forget what it was back then. It was like, I don't know, like $100. You get like 10 classes or 12 classes or something. And that's a great way of doing it. That's a great way to learn, to get the foundation in, right? And I think that guys should do that today. And it's sad that a lot of these things don't exist anymore, because they missed that opportunity to get in and do that. And I met some really cool people going to those classes too, right? But anyway, yeah, dude. So I think I'm going to lock her up for the night. My dog, if you can see over my shoulder, he's whining and begging me to go outside, so I probably should do that before he pisses all over the floor. But such is life, right? But thanks for coming on, fellas. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure as always, and we'll see you next Sunday. And thumbs up for War Amp. Stay classy, of course. But I'll try and get a video out to you guys maybe later this week. And any updates that come along. If I go to the junkyard, of course, I'm going to drag my camera with me and show you what kind of garbage we got laying around out here that you guys might be interested in. Plus, a friend of mine up the road said he found a full nitrous bottle, and they're planning on putting it in their old dirt truck up the road here and seeing if they can send the rods into space. So if that happens, he's going to call me, and I'll be running up there with the camera. I might get some pretty good footage of that. So anyway, take your sleazy, fellas. Have a good night.